In this episode of When Life Hands You Lemons, I sit down with one of my former instructors from Full Sail University. She comes from the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area and brings a combined experience of 14 years in radio, as well as music business knowledge from working in the dance music scene and with small independent labels. So Monique is a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh and has always loved music, but she was never a trained musician. During her college career, she was an integral part of the success of her college radio station, where she earned the respect of local promoters, venue managers, and her peers. She served as assistant promotions director for 4 months before she was promoted to the full-time promotions director position. She brings a combined experience of 14 years in radio from Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Orlando, Florida, as well as her music business knowledge and her experience within the dance music scene and with independent labels. Once she moved to Orlando, she was bitten by the entrepreneur bug and created a number of small businesses, from artist management, party and event promotions, personal organization, and small business consulting. More recently, she has been a contracted stage manager for Low Country Sound and Recording LLC and for various festivals and concert events. She has also done several projects and appearances as the voice talent and MC host for company events. Without further ado, please enjoy this episode with Miss Monique Mason. So we have Miss Monique Mason here. She was one of my former instructors here at Full Sail about 3.5 years ago, and she has quite a bit of experience in the music industry and has a very big passion for it as well. So Miss Monique, could you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and where you came from and all that fun stuff?
I can. So I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, born and raised. Just like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And then I attended college at the University of Pittsburgh. And I've always loved music. I'm just not a musician, even though deep down in my heart, I'm pretty sure I was a drummer in another life or something. So I attended University of Pittsburgh, and I've always loved music. And I wanted to be involved. I just didn't know how or where. But the one thing that was always consistent is that I used to be able to name every song on the radio, every music video from MTV. So we had a college radio station, and I went there, and, I saw in the college newspaper they were looking for DJs. And I was like, I'll try this. And so I answered the ad. I went up, I did the audition, and they didn't pick me. So I was a little... my ego was a bit bruised. And so after kind of dusting myself off, I went back up there and I said, hey, you guys didn't pick me to be one of your on-air personalities, but is there anything else here that I could do? And so the receptionist was an older woman. The station was entirely run by students. The only non-students were the receptionist, who was an older woman, and that was her full-time job. And then our general manager, general manager, and the guy that was head of the news department. So anyway, so I go back, and she really liked me. And then she said, well, the promotions director is about to graduate, and he's going on job interviews. He could probably use some help. I'll introduce you to him. So she introduced me to Jason, whose last name I can't remember, but for some reason I remember his first name. And I went to sit down with him and learn what his job was, and he was really unorganized. And but I worked with him, and then he just stopped showing up. He was just like, okay, she's got this, so I'm just going to go do my thing now. So I ended up becoming the promotions director in a matter of like a month. And then from there, people weren't showing up for their air shifts. And I was always up there because I had to do all of the giveaways. I had to do the prize sheets. I had to I ended up typing up some of the copy that the on-air personalities needed to read. And so people stopped showing up for their shifts. And so the general manager would go, hey, would you mind going into the studio and just put a compilation CD on? Okay, fine. Popped a compilation CD in there. So now I know how to run the board. I know how to turn things on. I had to hit the station ID every half hour. So one day he was just like, just get your license. So I got my license, and then they put me on the air, and I ended up having 2 really successful shows. So in a roundabout, I just got, I got into radio, even though they tried to not pick me, I got in there anyway. And then after graduation, I applied for stations back in Philly, since that's where I was from, and ended up working at a station in Philadelphia called Q102. And I was a promotions assistant there. So I wasn't on the air there as an on-air personality. But when you're in the promotions department, you go out on the different sales things that they do, like at car dealerships and shopping malls. And, hey, come on out. We're out here. Come win a prize and get a T-shirt and da-da-da. So that's what I was doing. But I spent all of my free time at the station. And so I wanted to learn everybody's job, and I wanted to know, how things worked and all that. And so that's how I got into radio. And then I came down here to Florida because I was tired of snow and the winter. And I also wanted an opportunity to get on air. At the time, Philadelphia was like a top 5 market, which is really big and a big deal to come out of college. There was no way somebody was going to put me on the air straight out of college in a large market. So my program director literally said to me, go suck somewhere else, and when you're better, you can come back. Well, Orlando it was. A friend of mine from Philly was here working at another radio station. He said, hey, there's a girl here, but she's leaving. We need another girl on our station. You want to come down? Packed up my car, got on the auto train, came down to Orlando, got on the air, and I had a 6-year career here in Orlando, which was amazing. And I really did start at the bottom. Like, I was on the air at like midnight on a Tuesday, and the only people listening to me were, truckers who didn't have any company. But from there, I just kind of built my fan base and had the most wonderful time working in radio here in Orlando.
Cool. You said that you were was it promotions director at the radio or
At college.
in college?
Mm-hmm.
So can you describe that role, or what does that entail?
My job was basically to make sure anything that we were giving away, I had the sheets typed out in the book for the different personality. So for example, if we had Lollapalooza tickets, so we established a relationship with the Lollapalooza promoters, and they gave us like 20 pairs of tickets. So I got to stretch out that giveaway over a period of time. So I got to determine how many tickets to give away in a week. And then I have to type up what I need the on-air personalities to say, to get. So we did a scavenger hunt, which was one of the toughest promotions I had to do, because in addition to telling them the basic copy to read, I had to come up with clues all around campus. And it was one of the best promotions I had ever done. But so then when somebody wins, the person on the air is supposed to, write down all their information, and then I go get the book out of the studio. People come up, collect their prize. I have to give them the prize, whatever. Basically promoting the station, but mostly giveaways. So anything from CDs to concert tickets to, I was also, not to toot my own horn, but I was the first person to, and it was under my direction, that we did our first live broadcast at the station. They had never done that. And it sounds crazy now, but this is, what year was that? That was 1990, I don't know, 3, 2. So all this technology and things that we do now weren't really a thing, especially for college back then. So that was my job as the promotions director, is to make sure, we were giving away prizes like we promised and making sure people got the mentions that we agreed upon. So it was my job to talk to all the concert promoters, all the venues, everybody.
And how did that experience kind of translate into your career, your radio career?
It was everything. I mean, I've always been a very outgoing person. I mean, I have my shy moments like most people, but when I'm on, you know? And so it really taught me a lot about, well, let me back up. Got to give props to my mom. My mom is very professional and she's always worked in corporate America. And so I get a lot of my professional behavior from my mom. So, but that experience in the promotions, running the promotions department for my college was my into commercial radio when I got back to Philadelphia. And I got promoted really quickly. When I got back to Philly, I started at Q102 as a regular, promotions assistant. About 6 months after I had been there, I got a office desk job as the sales promotion coordinator. And my job at that point was to deal with companies like Zephyr Hills or Coke, whoever the larger companies that our sales department, our national sales department was selling to, and some of the local. And they would go, hey, we have a sale coming up. We need a promotion. Come up with something. Then I'd have to sit there and get creative. I'll never forget the hardest one was Sprite had this new bottle and it had these little dimples all over it. And so they sent us cases of this stuff and they were like, we need you to come up with a fun promotion for this new bottle with the dimples in it. I must have stared at that bottle for like 2 hours. And I came up with this stupid promotion about people with dimples, something like they had to smile and send us pictures or something with the dimples. It was stupid, but what else am I going to do with that bottle? But that was my job, and I would go to meetings, and we would get wined and dined by these large companies, and they would give us ridiculous amounts of swag to give away on the air. So it really, I went from being one of the kids to being one of the adults. So I had to start wearing like professional clothes, which I hate because I'm a jeans and sneaker kind of girl, but yeah, I mean, that college experience really prepared me for. It made me more organized. But like I said, my mom had already instilled a lot of that in me. Just professional behavior, and then just my own creativity. Like music makes me creative. I'm not like you guys who create music. I find inspiration when I listen to music, so I come up with all sorts of stuff. If you give me like 2 songs, depending on the songs, I can come up with something. You tell me what you need, let me listen to some music, and I got it,
Yeah, and you do a lot of, here at Full Sail, you do a lot of the kind of, you're kind of jumping on and you're like for behind the scenes, you're the one talking on the main stage and that's all that kind of fun stuff. So when you're on the radio, did you have a fun name? Like a DJ name, radio name?
Oh my goodness, this is really funny. So I don't know if you know this, maybe you do, but Monique is not my real name. My real name is Monika. And when I moved to Orlando, I could not use my name because there was already a on-air personality here named Monika. And then we had another competing station there. One of their talents' name was Nikki Knight. Well, my middle name is Nicole, and everybody back home calls me Nikki. So I couldn't be Nikki, and I couldn't be Monika. And my program director was like, you have about 30 minutes to come up with a name that I'm going to like so you can go on air. So I just took the Monika and the Nikki and came up with Monique. So at first I was just like, hey, it's Monique. No. So that was the first part of it. Our audience at the time was largely Hispanic. When I first moved here, I could speak Spanish really well. Almost fluent, almost. And I could speak with an accent that made people think, oh, she might be Hispanic. Well, my program director at the time loved it. So my name, when I first started, was Monique de la Cruz. Then I felt really like a poser because then people started calling and speaking to me in Spanish. And I'm like, oh man, I need a minute to translate what they're saying. I could understand it. It just took me a while. So I couldn't reply right away. And then my vocabulary was like, I wasn't speaking Spanish as much as I should have been. So I went from Monique de la Cruz to Party Girl Monique, which is how most people, if you talk to anybody who listened to our station in the city of Orlando between 2000, I think I became Party Girl Monique probably about a year after I got here. So 2001 to 2006, they'll know Party Girl Monique because that's just who I became, which was more me. And it was more authentic. And I didn't have to worry about trying to speak Spanish because it was terrible. But yeah, so that's pretty much where Monique came from.
And do you still speak Spanish a lot, or?
I don't, man. And I'm so sad about it because I try. It's funny because if I'm sitting by myself, I'll try to have a conversation in my head in Spanish. And then I'm like, okay, why don't I know this word? And I'll go look it up. We used to have, when we had our old coordinator here, every day at 4:00 was for an hour, we had to speak Spanish while we were sitting in our little cube over there. And so it was good practice, but then we just kind of like fell off with it. But I would like to get back to speaking Spanish. I would really like to get to the point where I'm fluent. And then I want to pick up another language. I just don't know what, maybe Portuguese or something.
Oh yeah, it's definitely helpful here in Florida to know another language, especially Spanish.
Yeah, well, when I got here, even though I came down to work at the radio station, I was only part-time. And I only had $1,200 in the bank, which I went through really quickly. I was sleeping on my friend's couch for 6 months. I mean, the whole story is crazy. I'm not going to bore you with it, but so I had to find other work. And one of the jobs I had was a leasing consultant at an apartment complex. I had no idea how many Brazilians were in Central Florida. And so they would come in and speak no English. Well, I don't speak Portuguese, but I was the only one in the office that could speak some Spanish or enough. And so I would speak to a resident who was Brazilian in Spanish. They could understand me, but then they would reply in Portuguese. So we did a little bit of hand signals and whatever. But the fact that I at least made the effort, I made more money leasing apartments than some of the other girls because we also got commission. And they would tell all their friends, come and talk to this girl. So then I had like my little niche, which worked out for me.
Cool. Yeah, so kind of, I always wondered this, like I've never been in a radio station.
Mm-hmm.
How does kind of all that work? Everything is always so precisely timed.
Mm-hmm.
Is it kind of pre-scheduled? Like how, for example, do they talk about, they're talking, and then they switch to a commercial real quick,
Mm-hmm.
or they jump into promotion, or they jump to the radio person? How does that happen? Like,
It is all very planned out. It's all very timed. I don't want to give away all the magic, but the best way to explain it, and you'll notice this when you listen to the radio, a radio station hour, so you have to look at the station in just an hour, is broken up into quarters. So basically, you're going to have commercials about every 15 minutes. And depending on how many commercials were scheduled will determine how long that commercial break is. But we have a log to follow. The songs are already laid out for us, and it'll tell us when we're supposed to talk. And you just have to pay attention to the clock. So sometimes they schedule more songs more songs than the hour can hold. And so you just don't play the last, like you need to hit at the top of the hour. So right at 1:00, let's say, no later than like 1:03. So you got like a little bit of a window, but you don't want to go too long. You really need to hit the top of the hour, either early or right at the hour. Anyway, excuse me. Our log tells us everything. It tells us what song is about to play, when to talk. And so it'll say 30-second talk break. So now you know to just keep it short. Yeah, so you just figure out what you need to talk about. If you know you're doing a contest that hour and you know you're going to be giving something away in the next 20 minutes, let them know. Keep listening. I'm going to be giving, tickets away to see the Carters or whatever. Now you keep your listener there. Also, it's funny because radio is like perfect for somebody with ADHD or ADD or whatever, because we have to do a lot of things while we're in there. Everybody thinks we're just chilling, but we have a TV on, we're flipping through a magazine because we're looking for things to talk about. We have the TV on so we can see the news or if an emergency happens, or maybe we're watching Access Hollywood or something, you know what I mean? We're like, ooh, that's good. Or we're on somebody's blog or, whatever, getting entertainment news. But it tells us everything we're supposed to be doing. The colorful aspect of it is up to us. And that's where the personality aspect of it comes in. That's why you're an on-air personality. You develop your personality. For some people, they create characters. For me, I'm not good at being fake. So I just had to be myself and it worked for me. But some people are more animated than they are in real life, and silly or loud. But you would be surprised at how many people in radio are really shy. But we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so to answer your question, the hour is broken up into quarters. Everything is laid out on the log. And then you can tell if there's only 3 commercials scheduled, you actually can go a little bit longer. And so we have this little box. I'm trying to think. It used to be called a 360. I can't remember what is in the studio now. But when people call in, all the calls go into that box so we can record every single conversation. And if it's something really good, we can record it, edit it, and then dump it in while we're talk into the box and record everything and then play it back over the air. We like to record people winning because it gets everybody excited. It makes people want to play the contest again. So, but yeah, that's how it's laid out. Everything is pre-programmed. And now everything is computerized. We used to have to pull CDs, which was really stressful. And I'm a perfectionist, and I would have 2 hours stacked up. So I'd go pull. So you take the paper log, you go to the wall, which was like a huge wall of nothing but CDs with numbers, which our music director had to do, and sometimes the production director helped. And you look at the log, you find the number, you pull it out, and you go from top to bottom, something like that, because it was going backwards. I can't remember. But then you just stack them up, and then we used to blah, 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 talk, plug in the CDs, slide the faders up on the board. Now everything is on a computer, touch screen. Boop, let it run. When you know you got to talk, you touch it again, and it tells the computer to pause when that song is done. You got your mic ready to go, and then bed music, which is the music you play behind you when you talk. If you're not working for a station that does like dry talks, like Star 94.5 does, where they don't do background music, you just talk like we are. You get that ready, and then as soon as you just watch the countdown. Okay, and by now you know the song, so you know if the song fades out or you know if the song just cuts off. Now you've already either got the music playing, your bed music playing, and you bring it up behind you. So there's a lot of, because you never want dead air. You don't want space. Space is bad, so you become very impatient working in radio. I don't know anybody in radio who is a slow person. We are all very
or boring.
Well, I don't know. There might be
there's some boring,
yeah.
but like kind of monotone. Or like there are a few, I guess, but for
some
the
of the
most
news
part.
people.
Yeah, well, that's different. News people
some of
are
the
not.
News people, but I used to do traffic reports too. Like I had quite the career here. I'm so grateful for what I did in Orlando, but like traffic reports, you don't have a lot of time to do the report, so you don't have time to really be a personality. You're just like, well, there's a wreck over here, and then okay, and that's sponsored by, and it's a wrap. So yeah, but yeah, radio people are an interesting breed.
Yeah. So you talked about like getting everything ready and editing. Like what happens when, say, you make a mistake on air, like live? What happens then? Like how do you fix that? Or what happens if somebody calls in and they're just super angry and they're like cussing you out? Is that pre-recorded and then scheduled, or is that live?
So calls never go live on the air. And
are they filtered by you or the DJ, or are they filtered by somebody else?
No, they're filtered by me, the personality. So what was the first? Okay, so let me go to your first thing. You were saying, what if I make a mistake live? sometimes you just got to own the mistake. Hopefully it wasn't one that'll get you fired, like cursing, which I've never done, knock on wood. So hopefully you don't curse. Mistakes are going to happen. Sadly, you panic. I don't know anybody who hasn't panicked when there's been a mistake. It just depends on what the mistake is. Like I've been on air at times and the CD started skipping. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I just grab another CD and just, you just got to be ready to explain yourself, because if I play a song different than what's on the log, I got to cross that off and write in what song I played, But as far as callers go, in terrestrial radio, we do not put callers on live for that very reason. And not to mention, and I've had angry callers before. Usually you just take the call off air, so you don't answer the phone while you're on the air. It sounds like it's just been pre-recorded. We just know how to play it in.
Plug it into the show.
Yeah, we know how to plug it into the show, so you guys think it's a live call. But if you think about it, the call is almost too perfect, and that's because we've edited the call. Because the call can only be but so long. And sometimes we get winners for contests and we're like, hey, Lennon, you just won tickets to go see whoever. And you're like, cool. Yeah, we're not putting you on the air. So that's when you hear the DJ go, congratulations to Lennon. He got tickets to, because you were dry and boring and nobody wants to hear it. We need you excited. So that kind of stuff. But when angry callers call, you take the call and you say, I'm sorry you feel that way. And you try to be, you take a lot of roles when you're on the air, because there's crazy people out there too that think you're like their best friend. And we've had stalkers before.
You're somewhat of a celebrity.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's so weird. But yeah, I mean, we've had people come up to the radio station thinking we can jumpstart their singing career, and they've shown up in the lobby singing and like, put me on the radio. And we're like, no, that's not how this works. Like, the music comes from the record label. So yeah, I mean, when you're live, but see, we're so, radio trains you to be such a perfectionist. So we plan everything way before we go on the air. We know exactly when segments are going to happen. Me, I bullet point everything I'm going to say. When I first started, I was writing out full sentences. You could tell I was reading. I was horrible. But the more comfortable you get, you learn how to wing it. And I just started doing bullet points. So I already knew what I was going to say and what needed to happen next. So I made very few mistakes. The mistakes that did happen were things that I just couldn't control, which, like I said, were the CD skipping, That was pretty much the only thing that's ever happened. Oh, one time I waited too long and forgot to do the emergency broadcasting system. The thing that goes beep. This is a test of the emergency. So when you don't do it in a certain window of time, it takes over your board and it plays on its own. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I thought I had enough time to let a song in and then do it, and I didn't. And this was right after 9/11. And so I just played it off. I let it play, and then I just went back to the music. And this woman called and chewed me a new one, because this was during a time people said still had a lot of high anxiety about 9/11, and it was I felt awful. And she said, you should lose your job. And, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, lady, chill. Like, if it was a real emergency, it would have been followed by a message. Chill. You're not up here. So
The calls come in, they're recorded. Mm-hmm. You say that you have to edit them. Mm-hmm. How much time do you have to edit that clip? Do you have like 30 seconds? You're in Adobe Premiere or you're in Adobe Audition and you're editing like 30 seconds and then it has to go over? How does that work?
It's really hard. I am slow. I'm not going to lie, because I'm a perfectionist, so I'm looking at it. So you're looking at little WAV files on the screen. It's not Adobe. It's just whatever this.
It probably wasn't
is.
Even Adobe back then.
No, I mean, we had Adobe, but that was in the production studio, not in the on-air studio. So, no, it was coming out of the little box, a 360 box. I forgot, Vox Pro. And so you only got two channels, the caller and you. And so you can mute your channel and you can live while you're playing your recorded. So anyway, so yeah, you don't have a lot of time. Sometimes you have about a minute. Sometimes you have 30 seconds. And if I ran out of time, I would just hit another song and just finish editing and then just drop it in another spot. My friend Sean, who is on 95.3 now, he is the master editor. Like he can edit something in like 10, 15 seconds. I've just never seen I'm such a perfectionist. I need to like actually make sure I lined it up properly and I got all the space out and, and he's like, boop, 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 done. Like, to this day, it amazes me because every once in a while I'll go up there and hang out and I just watch him. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I just don't. But yeah, you don't have a lot of time. You really don't.
And especially it's interesting because like when you're editing music and stuff, like today, just editing this podcast, I'm not going to be able to edit it in a minute. No. That's not going to happen.
No.
So it's interesting to see how that turnaround time kind of comes through. So kind of deviating a little bit, I want to come back to some of your stuff like when you were coming up a little bit, but I want to jump on this before. So how, in your vision, how do you think the radio industry has kind of changed and does it factor in how important is it to the music industry these days?
Okay, I think it's changed a lot as far as the level of interest. The industry itself, radio is radio. It's about advertising. It's not about the music. And though the radio stations have to establish a relationship with the music industry, radio needs to sell advertising. That's always going to be the case. But due to streaming, people don't quite listen to the radio as much as they used to. But radio is never going to go away. That's a mistake I think a lot of people make. They think, oh, well, we have Pandora and we have Spotify. What do we need the radio for? I'm going to tell you why you still need the radio. Because it still has a local connection. If something went wrong today, if a bomb dropped, if a mass shooting happened, guess what people are going to do? They're going to the radio and they're going to the TV. They're not listening to Spotify. They're not listening to Pandora to get the information. So radio isn't going anywhere. It will have to evolve in some way for sure, particularly because there's also legislation coming around where radio is going to have to pay for the sound recordings that you hear. Right now, the only people who get paid when you hear a song on the radio are the songwriters. The record labels and the artists are not getting paid. And they've had issue with that for decades. Now they have done all the proper lobbying and that's going to change. So the question becomes, how is radio going to find the funds to pay both copyright owners now, As far as like the music side of it, there are some genres of music that rely still on radio. Gospel is a genre that still relies on radio because even though there's newer artists that are targeting the younger audience who is on Spotify and Pandora, the bulk of that audience is an older audience. Those people are not listening to, my parents do not listen to Spotify and Pandora. They still listen to the radio and CDs, which I'm going to have to teach them how to switch it up. Country is another genre that still, again, borderline, depending on, who's listening, is still really listening to the radio. So it'll be interesting to see the evolution. In my opinion, I think what would be cool is two things. I think that radio should embrace more local talent, which would help both of them, in my opinion, would help the local talent build a fan base, and would also help drive people maybe to the radio because now maybe the industry is paying a little bit more attention. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because the internet is so massive right now. Like everything is online, But I do think it would be about time that radio did a little bit more to embrace local talent. And then the other thing I think might be cool is particularly since audiobooks are so popular, if radio in some way almost went back to its roots where there used to be stories on the radio and people used to just listen to the radio, it was theater of the mind. So you had to listen, and it still kind of is. That's why people have this image of who you are. You know, before, like when I started, people heard me on the radio and my picture wasn't up on the website yet. So they had this image of me just from listening to me. And so I think we could get back to that, utilizing radio for some other purposes. You know, we could still do music. It's almost like MTV. MTV started music videos. They had to evolve as well. They still play music videos, but they have other content there that's still maintaining their significance. I think terrestrial radio can pull that off as well. And I think doing something with audiobooks or you know, like back in the day when they used to do soap operas, people used to sit and stare at the radio. Now, we all listen, most of us listen to music in passing. It's a secondary kind of thing. What are people doing? Cleaning the house, washing dishes, doing laundry, mowing the yard. You're always doing something else while you're listening to the radio anyway. So if audiobooks are your thing, I think maybe somehow there may need to be a relationship between radio and Audible or somebody.
So what about like, are you talking about like more engagement as well? Because when you're listening to the radio, it's just basically noise. Like some people just put it on as noise, but are you like, what about like interact?
I think there's a way to. I think there's totally a way to do that. I mean, I haven't really thought it out, but I think there's a way to make it happen. And you know, television is doing it too. They're like, oh, go to Twitter and do this. Well, you can do the same thing through radio.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I haven't thought it out in full. You can totally make that happen, though. You can totally go, okay, here's what's happening in this chapter. Like back in the day, this is way before your time, I think. There used to be these books, and you could choose which path you wanted the character to go. So if you want him to go this way, turn to page 64. If you want him to do this, turn to page 48. We could almost do something like that in radio. And it may, for all we know, it could help kids with reading. It may, you know what I mean? There could be a secondary aspect where you go to the radio station's website and you can have some printable materials, especially for kids radio, and then the kids can follow along. Kids are more visual though, so that would have to be, you'd have to utilize technology. There could be an app to go with it. The same way we do Kahoot. If the person at the radio station, or if this was a pre-recorded thing somehow, I don't know, you got people interacting with an app, they're all hitting answers and boom, it shows up on a screen to me at the radio station. And I can say, oh, it looks like you guys really like this and da-da-da. So they feel like you're talking directly to them. You see what I mean? Like that is a big thing with radio because people always want to get on the radio. So now there's another option for, and a lot of stations are doing like chat rooms and stuff while they're broadcasting. So it's totally possible to find a new evolution for radio. And I could think of a few different ways to monetize if it had to switch up that way. And that's the thing, like with radio, it's all about how are we going to make money and build the brand like any other business.
Yeah, exactly.
It is no different from any other business. The only problem is that this particular business is relying on an area of intellectual property that gets a little tricky. Like every business, think about it, grocery store is reliant upon somebody else's intellectual property. What do you think's in the grocery store? Somebody's trademarked product.
Many people's trademark.
Right,
product.
exactly. So this is no different. It's just that it's dealing with music where there's multiple hands in that pie and it's digital versus, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Brick and mortar. You know what I mean? I can go on and on, but
yeah, I mean, we could go on and on.
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's a lot of information. It's kind of fun to see like where people think things are going to go and predict.
It's just endless opportunities if somebody got creative enough. But you can't dismiss technology. You just can't.
No, you can't. And it just takes a lot of money as well. And
Yeah.
I think everybody, not just kids, but everybody is visual. these days, much more visual. They learn visually. And I think that's why kind of video content is taking over, like on Facebook. So I think it'd be kind of interesting to see like maybe a platform that would come up that would be used specifically for radio. Like, I mean, I know iHeartRadio has apps and like Pandora and stuff, but they don't have like specific, or even Spotify coming up with some like being able to tune into like local radio. I think that'd be kind of interesting. So let's kind of go back a little bit to where we first started.
Okay.
When you first moved to Florida, you had talked about, you mentioned in the submission that you kind of were bitten with the entrepreneur bug, quote unquote. I like that. So you started like a personal organizing, artist management, party and events. Kind of, how did that kind of come about? And do you still kind of continue with that stuff, or?
I do, a little bit. So I think that the entrepreneurial aspect is in my blood. My grandmother was a business person. My uncle was my grandmother owned a bridal shop. My uncle owned a bike shop. My father always made, my dad was just really handy and would always make stuff and sell it. But that never really translated to me until much later in life. So when I got to Orlando, I realized the power I had after being on the radio. People were like, come out, because I said, come out and hang out and party. And I even told my students this: if you're good at something, why not make some money at it? As long as it's legal.
Okay, true.
Caveat. But if it becomes work and it's not fun for you, then don't do it. So I was good at partying. And I had been out enough around Orlando. I saw different people throwing parties. And I was like, well, why don't I throw a party? Like, people know who I am. The club owners knew who I was. So I was able to bypass paying venues to use their space. I was like, they knew me from the radio station. So they had nothing but complete trust in the fact that if anybody could get people to come out, it'd be Monique. And it worked, for the most part. So I just started doing little parties here and there, and it was great. And then the bigger I started to get, the more work I saw it was becoming, and it was getting expensive. And I had a business partner, and it was a learning curve there with the parties. And then with the personal organizing, I'm just very OCD. And I was like, people don't like to straighten out their messes. I'll do it. You want to pay me to do it? Because people are like, wow, you're so organized. I'm like, yeah, it's not that hard. Oh, I'm terrible at that. Light bulb, bing. And I started looking it up, and I see there's like certified personal organizer. It was the craziest thing I ever seen. Like, if you look at Hoarders, you ever see that show, Hoarders?
I love that show. It's one of my favorite shows.
I can't do it. Straight. You want to see me clean my house? That shit, 5 minutes into that show, I'm already up, and my house is spick and span already. But I'll find something to clean because that show stresses me out. Yeah. But they have, if you watch that show, they have, because hoarding is a mental disease, is a condition. They have one person who's a doctor, and the other person is a certified personal organizer.
Professional organizer.
Yeah. And that person usually has a specialty with hoarders. I can't do that because I don't like bugs and I don't like dirt.
I don't have the patience either.
No. Especially if somebody's going to fight me on it. Like, my thing was always, don't call me unless you are really ready to do this. And so the other thing I've always tried to incorporate, even though I'm a Christian, I find a lot of peace in Eastern religions, like Buddhism, and there's just a lot of peace there for me. And so the name of my personal organizing business was Sensual Spaces. And I tried to work in like some feng shui and, just things that would not only organize your stuff, but actually make it more productive for you because it was arranged properly, And so that was a big thing for me. I did pretty good for a little while, and then the economy tanked and people didn't want to pay for it anymore. But if somebody asked me, I wouldn't charge them a whole lot of money now because it's not necessary. But you'd have to pay for all the materials and stuff. But So yeah, so that was it. Just for me, it just seemed like a natural thing to do. Like, hey, you're good at this.
Plus, you kind of were grown up with it, with your mom
Yeah.
and
Oh
have
yeah.
professionalism and all that. Like, I think if professional people are, in my experience, are more organized. Sometimes they're not, but in my experience, they're more organized. They know in their head or they're writing stuff down. They're more organized.
That's just how my brain works. I like puzzles, but I have to everything has to be categorized or grouped in some way. That's just how my brain works. So for me to really get a hold on something, I need to figure out how I'm supposed to be looking at it and what its relationship is to like other things. That's for everything. Like when I create my own forms for, um, the business that I do. Like, so I did event planning too. And, I had a team of friends. We got together. We were trying to do it together as a business. That didn't last long either. Just because there were too many people involved and some people I don't think were taking it very serious. But, I drew up like our forms on how our event forms. And if you look at them, you'll see they're very compartmentalized and I'm great at designing forms. I worked for a forms company in Philly. That was one of my part-time, well, it was a full-time job, but it was one of the ones that made me the most money. But I worked for a forms company, so I got a little insight into what forms require. But my latest endeavor is all me. I will never manage artists again, ever in my life. Whoever wants to do it can have it. But I'll help an artist get organized and, send them on their way.
Yeah.
Give them a little checklist. Because I did some consulting. I thought about it, but the most, and I feel my heart goes out to attorneys and other consultants because the most frustrating thing is advising people and then they don't want to follow your advice.
Professional advice.
Professional advice. Yeah. And for me, people are like, well, you still got paid. You got the money. Yes, but this is a passion. I don't just want the money. I want to see my clients do well because if you do well, then that's more business for me. But if you don't want to listen to me, this is frustrating. I don't want to do it anymore. So now I'm doing my voiceover business that I'm working on building and, some other little aspects of that I'm putting together. And right now it's just me. I have a guy who's going to be my camera person for the YouTube channel once I get that up and running. So I feel, I don't know, it's a different endeavor. And I like this one.
Yeah,
it's just less stressful.
Yeah, and it's something that you can kind of do on your own time too.
Yeah, and I mean the only thing I'm really learning is like gear. I'm learning about microphones and I'm gonna try to learn about software. I'm just not that kind of person. I'm not a technical person. I'm more of a creative person.
You just want to conceptualize the ideas and then kind of give it to everybody
And I'm
else.
a great project manager. I can see it through, but don't ask me to plug all this and I have no idea what's going on, And it's funny because I work festivals, but I'm a stage manager. Why? Because I can get along with people and I'm good at problem solving. And
that's kind of a project manager position in itself, stage manager.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Yeah. But I love it because I get to see some amazing talent. And it's funny that I've only had one issue at a festival and it wasn't with the artist, and I handled it. And that's the reason I think too, like people know like, oh, she's cool, but she means business. And so I get asked to do things all the time because they're like, if anybody will do it right, it's Mo. Because Mo handles it. Yeah. Because that's what you're asked. That's what you paid me to do. If you give me a job, I take it serious. You know what I mean? I don't understand playing around and messing around and
if
stuff.
you're not serious about it, just let somebody
What's
know.
the point?
Move on.
There's probably somebody else who really would like to have that position and do it well.
I had a friend recently who had a job in Tampa. He lives here in Orlando and he didn't move, but he went out to Tampa to do the loading out and loading in for the Luke Bryan concert. Mm-hmm. And he showed up and 20 minutes in, he's like, I can't do this. It's not for me. And he went home. So it just like there's some people that are there that are interested in doing that, and some people it's just not for them. Mm-hmm. And you need to let some. He told the manager, he's like, I can't do this. I'm not.
Well, what did he think it was? I mean,
well, I didn't think it was a lot more than what it was, and it was like Luke Bryan. It was going to be a lot of work, mm-hmm. and I don't think that everything
People underestimate the entertainment industry.
They do.
All aspects of it.
I
They
mean,
think
he
it's
has an
all-
idea. He had an idea of what it was, but I don't think he kind of like fully prepared for it. And then
I mean, I've been on jobs, like I said, I stage manage when he calls me for different festivals when I work with Low Country Sound. And we've taken students out to work with us, and a lot of them don't cut it. They're just like, oh, this is a lot of work. Oh, this is a long day.
And all
Oh,
they do
it's
is
too
complain.
hot. Yeah, don't come in here with that. I'm twice your age and I'm still moving. Tighten up.
yeah, because there's 2 or 3 other people that would really love to have
We
your
could have
job.
brought somebody who was ready to come in here and work and make the best of this opportunity.
And that is their dream job, is to come in and do that.
And a lot of people and a lot of people don't understand the networking that's happening. And keep in mind, somebody is always watching you, whether it's somebody from a management position or
Fans.
a customer or a fan, because the experience you create for them, guarantee they're going to communicate that to somebody else. That is why Charlie brings me back to work festivals. And this year, I'm getting more responsibility. Why? Because they saw what I did in the previous year. So they're like, you know what? We can actually trust her to do more because she's been great and then some, at which you always go above and beyond. But the point is that somebody's like, oh, she was so nice. She went out of her way to do this for me. She didn't have to do that. Or, you know what I mean? It's like, take a few minutes, treat people the way you want to be treated. And it'd be amazed at what comes out of
Especially
that.
at festivals too, because people spend a lot of money on their tickets.
Yes.
They want that experience. And if
Yes.
they're going to have a negative experience,
Yep.
you probably will lose a customer
Mhm.
and their group of friends will not
Mhm.
come back next year.
And the company you're working for, if a complaint comes in, now you've affected the person you're working for. So like if somebody complains about me and says to Charlie, hey, don't bring that girl anymore, or we had this problem with your crew, that's affecting his money too and his reputation as a business. So, I think that's something else that we as employees or contractors, even if you're freelance, you need to keep that in mind, that you're doing work for somebody else. Because your reputation is what's getting you your next job.
Mm-hmm. And it's all in who you know.
Yeah.
And if you're screwing around and doing stuff
Yeah.
stupid.
If you do good work for somebody, they'll recommend you to other people. I mean, that's just how it works.
Yeah. So how did you get into the kind of the last topic, and then maybe if there's anything else we can go back on and kind of elaborate, but how did you get into like working festivals and what's that experience like, and what festivals have you worked?
Oh my goodness. So there's a guy that works here named Charlie Webb. Charlie is a mastering engineer, but he also owns a live sound company called Low Country
I
Sound.
remember in your class, which was, I can't remember, Fundamentals of Music Business is what it was called at the time, and you had him come in and speak to us. And
Yep. So I met Charlie here at Full Sail. I'm trying to think how this even got started. I went out with him on a couple in stores. So there's a store here called Park Ave CDs, and a lot of time bands, before they play like that night, would do an in-store. And so we would take some students and we'd go out to Park Ave and set up. And, I've always been curious, like trying to learn about the gear side of things. But I've always been good about organizing the students and like, laying down the law. And so trying to think. Oh, and then we did some local small festivals, like at the Plaza. They used to do these festivals there. I forgot what that festival was called. But we had the smaller stages outside. So Charlie was like, and I would help with load in. Like, I can push whatever you call it.
I don't even, I'm drawing a blank.
Case or whatever. Road case, that's
Road
what it
case,
is.
yep.
You can tell I'm not the technical person. But if they need help pushing stuff in, I'm not like girly, but like, oh, I'm going to break a nail. Although I do make sure I don't break a nail. But I'm pretty strong and I'm not a little girl, so I can push and move stuff and help out wherever I can. But it's just not like plugging in XLR cables and all that stuff. I stay away from anything where electricity is flowing or could blow up. I'm good. But anyway, so I helped him out with that. And so he was like, hey, somebody didn't show up. Would you mind? And they hand me a clipboard with a bunch of W9s on them. I have to go around all the stages. So there were like 3 stages. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 stages at this particular festival. And I had to go find out who the manager was. I had to get them to fill it out so the bands could get paid. And so that was my job, making sure that I had all the tax forms filled out, and then making sure the artists were okay in the green room. And then something else happened, and then I ended up being the artist wrangler to go get them, ready for stage. And they're like, okay, we need the band here at this time. So I quickly learned how to play the game with the artists who didn't want to come on stage on time. But I also did that back in Philly. We used to do a event at the Philadelphia Convention Center, and I had to work with Tony Braxton and Brian McKnight. Brian McKnight was a dream. Tony Braxton was a nightmare. And I almost lost my job saying a lot of things to her and her team because she wasn't coming out on stage. It was running late. There's unions involved. Like, this is serious, So it wasn't my first rodeo when I got down here. But and then Charlie just said, why don't you come work this festival with me? I need a stage manager for my stage. So you'll be part of my crew. And so I started researching, like, what does a stage manager do and, like, what should I have? And I became known for my little black backpack that had everything in it, from bug spray to sunblock to handy wipes, first aid kit, pens, highlighters, you name it, I had it. And so at that first big festival we worked, it was like a joke. But then who did they come looking for when they needed something? Yeah. So as far as like what festivals I've worked Halloween, which is a huge festival here. I've worked Purple Hatters. I did the Zach Deputy disc golf jam thing that they had. And then a bunch of the little ones here at the plaza, which they haven't done in a while because it's new owners there. What else have I done? I know I'm forgetting something, but those are the ones I can remember because they were like the biggest deals. Like, had to drive out there, stay in a tent or wherever they put us up for the night, which was not a hotel.
No.
But it's cool. I like it. It's roughing. It's not for everybody. I mean, I got to share. Last year I had to share a tent with 5 guys. Yeah. And they're not clean. So, you have no idea.
That would be no fun. So you like staying, you like the festival kind of gigs?
I do, because the music is amazing. Amazing. Like, to your audience, please go see a festival because you are missing out. Like, this year, the lineup is Janelle Monáe, Jamiroquai, Action Bronson. Of course, we have Lettuce, Nth Degree. Like, some of the bands people are like, scratching their heads. Go look them up. They're pretty badass. And I get backstage. I have an all-access pass because I'm part of the production crew. I don't bother artists because even when I'm fangirling over somebody, it's a job. And I just got to, like, hold it in and just, wait for the right opportunity to maybe say, hey, your show was great. Would you mind taking a picture? I don't bother artists. Like, you can look on my social media. I don't have a lot of picture with artists because I just don't bother them. Sometimes I'm lucky and I'm hanging out with them and I take that moment to be like, you know what? I'm sure this person is really happy I'm not sitting here snapping a million pictures. Let me just enjoy the moment. So I think they appreciate that my phone isn't out and that they're not on. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's just, wow.
Plus the networking opportunities that are there.
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing though, because you're running around so much and like Halloween, the property is enormous. So the only way you're really going to get a chance to network is backstage, which has happened because working for the radio station, we've put on a lot of shows. And I've had an opportunity to network with a lot of artist management. Their agents, not so much. Mostly their managers and other band, like the Pussycat Dolls. I remember when I met them in New York, we were up there for whatever that big one is they do in New York. We went up there for that. Even here, though, back when the dance music scene was really big here, a lot of the artists we had here, we ended up partying all night with them, driving around in the car. Like, people would be like, what? When I was a promotions assistant, we had to go pick them up at the airport. So here I am driving with Shaggy, if anybody remembers Shaggy, in the car, and they're all making fun of me because they're like, oh, a woman? She's driving this big van? I'm like, yeah, and y'all better be quiet before I hit the brakes.
Yeah.
And you all hit the windshield, And they're like, oh, she's funny, but you know what I mean? So there's just so many opportunities to show like you're responsible and whatever. And those really, oops, I keep hitting this thing. Those were really the moments where people saw that I was reliable. I mean, that's why I get to do so much is people like, we can trust Monique. She shows up early. She shows up ready. I do, like you said, I do the BTS thing here. I did Hall of Fame last year. I did the red carpet. I did the announcing. And I prepare. And sometimes I get a little anxious and I over prepare, but at least they know I'll get the job done. So if you ask me to do it, then
build
you
a
know
reputation for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've already got almost an hour now, which is excellent. So kind of you've done so much in the industry already, in radio and festivals and promotions and all that stuff. Do you have any like ultimate goals that you are still working towards and you haven't done just yet?
Yes. And I'm working on it now. I tend to be a little too planned and overcautious, but I'm working on it. So Mo Says is my voiceover business that I'm currently trying to get off the ground. My website's almost ready to go. I just have to get my samples up there. But as an extension of Mo Says is my YouTube channel, which is Mo Says More. And that is going to be like just more of me and some of the things that I encounter and have fun with every day. Different things around the city of Orlando or wherever I may be. Since my cameraman is here in Orlando, most of the stuff will be here and anything else will just be me on my phone. But I really want to build a brand, and I want to build a brand that can generate the revenue I need to help other people. This is not about me being rich. Yes, I'd like to live comfortably. Nobody wants to worry about money. As long as my bills are paid and I can go out to eat when I want to go out to eat and travel when I want to travel, I'm straight. I don't need to be a millionaire or a billionaire. But I really would like to see me build a brand that generates relationships and revenue that will allow me to help other people. I want to help young girls in areas where there may be a lot of violence. I mean, I want to help people in general. But as a woman, I really want to reach out to a lot of the young women out in the communities. Then I would like to invest in underdeveloped areas, starting in Orlando, obviously, like just places that have been abandoned, and put businesses there that are going to help the area thrive, hire people in that area and teach them to take better care of their neighborhoods, push out the drug dealers, push out the violence, Like there's areas here in Orlando that stress me out and I don't even live there. But it's sad, man. You know what I mean? It's like, and I drive around and I see all this vacant space and I'm like, why? Why is that like that? I want to buy up all the property and build something that area, the people in that community can come to and appreciate where they live. You know what I mean? But there's so much involved with that. Like I've been reading, there's so much political things going on with these different neighborhoods, and like the groundwater is bad, or you know what I mean? It's like, it's stuff that's way above my pay grade that I have. That's why I say I want to build the relationships and get the revenue to help people. And literacy is going to be my big thing. So once I get this thing off the ground, the first thing I'm going to do is start volunteering at the literacy, what's it called? It's like the Orlando Literacy something, to help people with reading skills, and so they can get jobs and not be embarrassed. I remember when I couldn't tell time. I'll never forget that. I was in like 6th grade and I looked at the clock. The teacher asked me what time it was and I was like sweating bullets. It just didn't, for some reason, I looked at the clock. It just didn't make sense. Obviously I can tell time now, like even without a digital clock, but I can't imagine what it's like to be an adult and not be able to read. You know what I mean? So And bullying is another one I want to go after. There's so much I want to do.
Just
Law
getting
school.
getting in. Yeah, I think eventually, me too. Eventually,
Good. I was going to ask you that earlier. Let's do it, Lennon. Come
let's
on.
do it. We got to pick a university, and we can.
Well, we got to take the LSAT first.
That's
we got
true.
to pass the LSAT, which there's one in December of 2018.
I don't know if it'll be this year.
But yeah, law school would be great. I always said I'm a daughter of a military veteran. And I always said I would love to get my law degree. And even though most of it will be focused on intellectual property and that kind of thing,
That would be my
I would
forte.
really like to do some pro bono work for military vets, whatever they need, if I could. So
Plus, I think we both would, because we both like problems. And with law, it's very like, if this happens and this has to happen, and if that happens and you have to go back here, and it's a lot of problem solving.
yeah,
Makes you think.
It's interesting, and I have a lot of friends that are attorneys, and I'm just in awe of their brilliance. And I'll be honest, the one thing they have in common is that they all are well traveled. Something I've never done. Doesn't mean I'm less smart. It just means that I think traveling the world really does more for you intellectually than anything else. So yeah, that's definitely it's not even practicing law. I don't know. This is a different conversation, but yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about that.
Law
for all
school
day.
has always been something on my plate. I did take the LSAT a long time ago and just never applied to law school. I think I scared myself. I was like, oh crap, I think I can actually do this. No.
Yeah. Because I've heard like multiple different things. Like if you're gonna practice it, like go into it. But if you're not gonna practice law, then like wait to go to school for it. I don't know. I've heard a couple different things, but I just want to like learn. I just like the ability
I like
to learn.
learning. Me too. See, and that's funny because I hated school.
Yeah.
I didn't start liking school until like my end of my sophomore year of college. Then I really started to dig school. I was like, man, this is some awesome stuff.
Yeah, and I heard Full Sail's got some good programs that kind of prepare. Like their music business program is really good for as like a prerequisite to law school and entertainment masters. I guess, well, we have like an hour and 5 minutes now, so we've got a lot of content to go through and use. So kind of the last parting question, I guess, to kind of wrap everything up, unless you have something else to add, would be, what are some tips and tricks you would have for people wanting to get into either radio or the music industry or festivals or anything like that? Anything you even tell your students here at Full Sail, like things you constantly tell and things that you tell them and they follow and it actually works?
Well, it's a little bit different for everything. I mean, if you're trying to get into radio, figure out what your niche is going to be at this point. I mean, because what's happening is radio is consolidating. It's a lot of syndicated shows with maybe one or two slots with local talent. So I would say make yourself stand out in some way and build your fan base, which is something I say to anybody trying to get into the music industry as an artist. Build your fan base and they will come. As far as festivals go, it depends on what you're trying to do at the festival. You got to go volunteer. Start out as a volunteer. Every event has room for volunteers. Get in there, volunteer, meet people,
Work hard.
Show your work ethic. Work ethic is everything in all aspects of this, including radio. Like you can ask anybody who knew me when I started. I was at the radio station. You would think I didn't have a home because I was always at the radio station. Always. So everybody knew me. Didn't matter what time of day it was. There were people who didn't know other people because they were like two ships passing in the night. But I knew everybody because I was always there. You just have to have a strong work ethic. You got to be creative, and not just in creative in the sense of creating the content you're making, but creative in how you do your research and find people and get people's attention. Give them a way to remember you, a positive way to remember you when you go on interviews or when you're reaching out to people. Like that's something I'm working on now. Once my website's done, I'll get my business cards. And then I want to think about, okay, how am I going to reach out to these people for their business? Am I going to send them lips in an envelope, that says Mo Says on it? Like what am I sending them? So get creative, be patient. Everybody, the internet makes you think things happen overnight. It doesn't. It's a lie. It's a lot of hard work. Yes, we are seeing people on social media making millions of dollars off of their videos, but there's a lot of work. As much as I can't stand some of the stuff I see on the internet, the people who are social influencers, or what do they call them? Media influencers or whatever.
Yeah.
They put a lot of work into it. I got to give them credit because you have to come up with the content. You got to shoot the content. You got to edit the content.
You got to be unique.
Yeah.
And you got to be doing something that people want to
Yeah.
follow.
And you got to be doing something that people want to follow. And then you got to schedule when you're going to release it and how you're promoting it and how all your social. So it's a lot of work. And I just said this earlier today to someone. They were asking, well, how long does it take to be successful? 2 seconds, 5 minutes, you know, and I said, it's going to take as long as you're willing to put the work in. And you have to be willing to not beat yourself up over obstacles. Everybody's going to
You have to fail to succeed.
Yeah. And not only that, it's not just the failure, it's how you bounce back from the failure. Like, you got to ask yourself, what did I learn from that? Okay, dust yourself off. Now, fix it.
Don't do it again.
And don't do it again.
Hour and 10 minutes now. So if anybody has any questions about anything, how can they reach out to you or follow you or anything like that?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm finally on the gram. Moses_more. And my email is mosesvo@gmail.com. And the website will be up as soon as possible. So I haven't bought the URL yet. So, but you'll see all of, if you follow me on Instagram, then you'll get all the information. So when it's ready.
Yeah, that's all I have. If there's anything else you want to add, thank you so much.
That was fun, Lennon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of When Life Hands You Lemons. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Miss Monique Mason. She, like I said in the introduction, that she was one of my instructors from Full Sail, and I learned so much from her. So I hope that you were able to learn as much as I did from her in this episode. As always, you can follow me on Patreon, on Twitter, on Instagram, and be sure to support this podcast on Patreon. And you can also subscribe to my mailing list as well, so you can receive music industry tips and tricks and also be notified when an episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of When Life Hands You Lemons.